Thank you for joining us for this press conference this morning. We have David, of course, joining us. We have Mark from Goldcoast, and we're delighted to have Natalie Cook to talk to us a bit about beach volleyball, which of course debuted yesterday. So Natalie, thank you very much for taking the time out and joining us. Before we begin, I'd just like to hand over to David, who's going to say a few words, and then we'll move on to sport.
Yes, just wanted to bring everyone's attention to today. Read that the 24th anniversary of the Tutsi genocide would be marked and respected to commemorate this moment in their history. Also, there will be at the Chef de Mission's meeting, a statement read, and I'm happy to furnish the statement if anyone is interested. I guess, framing the context of why this commemoration is, important. Is important. In 1994, between the 7th of April to mid-July, the country of Rwanda experienced an atrocity of mass genocide of the Tutsi people. An estimated 1 million Tutsis were killed, constituting as many as 70% of the Tutsi population. We, the Commonwealth family, wish to acknowledge this tragedy 24 years to the day, and would ask everyone, of course, to stand and observe a minute of silence with our Rwandan friends. That'll be read out to the Chef de Missions, and of course, as the Rwandan team plays at the beach volleyball. So it's just, I felt it was important not to start off on a somber note, but to recognize that we have, and you'll hear this again and again and again, we have an opportunity to build awareness and advocate for all types of things through the power of sport, and we should all, I think, just take note of the privilege we have to come together and be a force for good. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Natalie, thanks very much for joining us. I'm sure you need a little introduction, of course, but a two-time Olympic medalist, 1 gold, 1 bronze. Here you are on home ground seeing beach volleyball in the Games, Commonwealth Games for the first time. What does that mean for it to arrive here at the Commonwealth Games on Australian soil?
Very, very special for us as a sport and a sporting community to see our sport featured in the Commonwealth Games at Coolangatta Beach. The venue is sensational. If you haven't been there, you've probably seen some images. I got goosebumps yesterday when the first ball was served, and it's been a long time in the making for our sport, and to see the crowds love it, to see the stadium full, to see the atmosphere and hear the atmosphere, and to see our players in action doing a great job was just sensational. I'm very excited for the Rwandan team today to be able to make their mark out there.
Tell us a bit more about that atmosphere. I think for those that haven't been, they've certainly seen it on television, it's pretty unique, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is one of those sports. I keep telling everybody that you don't have to be quiet. When the serve's being served, the whistle's blown, please don't be quiet. If we can hear ourselves think, that's not a good thing. we would rather have the crowd atmosphere and the energy that's electric. So I remember playing with Kerry in one World Championships where we literally, that's why the signals are important, because we literally couldn't hear each other from this far away. And whether it's at the start of the point, the end of the point, during the point, we love the roller coaster of emotion of the crowd as well. So it is electric. It will be, come finals time, when we see the medals up for grabs, you'll be on the edge of your seat, even watching it on TV, on the edge of your seat.
And what teams should we be looking out for, aside from Australia?
Well, of course, that's a given. Our teams have trained very, very hard. Our Volleyball Australia have prepared them well for this moment. It's very historic and iconic for us. The teams to watch are Canada. The Canadian women's team is #1 in the world right now, and the men are very strong too. You'll be surprised maybe to hear that Vanuatu in the women is a medal chance. And Australia especially they've got an Australian coach, and they've been doing a lot of work helping to develop Vanuatu. And the Vanuatu women are a real figurehead in their country, and not only for sport but for women. And they are now very famous in Vanuatu. They almost made the Rio Games off their own merit, qualifying through the procedures, but now I think they'll medal. So I'm predicting a bronze for Vanuatu. I'm predicting a Canadian-Australian final in the women. So let's see.
Let's see who wins that. Of course, another thing that's been keeping you busy is you're an ambassador for Pride House, and inclusivity is a big priority of the Commonwealth Games. Tell us a little bit about that role, and of course opening the house the other day. What did that mean to you?
Yeah, it was very exciting to see the launch of Pride House last week, and to see the number of people that came to the launch and embraced it. And it really is a space of inclusivity. That the house is welcoming of everyone, not just athletes, also Pride supporters and friends of the Pride family. So it really is, I mean, the Commonwealth Games, the platform of the Commonwealth Games is exciting for us because the humanity factor, the equality factor, and also the destiny of the values of the Commonwealth Games is very important for Pride House, and to create a safe space for all athletes in the community and their friends and family. So we hear that it's illegal in many countries still in the Commonwealth for homosexual behaviour. So obviously in Australia with the marriage equality bill passing, and I personally am getting legally married the end of this month. So it's very exciting that we can be inclusive in that space and provide leadership in the equality space. So thank you to the CGF.
Thanks, Natalie. Mark, before we move on to you for a little look back at yesterday and a look ahead at what's to come, David, if we can just touch a bit more on the beach volleyball, and of course how it came to being at this Games, and how sports become on the programme.
Well, it's fantastic, and I think everyone will say quite an appropriate addition to Goldcoast 2018. But I think the general principle of sports that are universally accessible. We have 2/3 of the world's small states and island states. We have such a diverse Commonwealth. To have sports, particularly team sports of a smaller size, that we can ensure more teams can participate. And I think that's one of the real strengths of beach volleyball. It's the ability to get that universal appeal, but also access. And so, for example, Vanuatu to Rwanda. In a larger team sport, it would be more difficult in some states to be able to field a team. The solidarity also, I think, in team sports, we've seen in rugby sevens, the potential for growth is much faster. And so we at the Commonwealth Games Federation, as we start to review our sports programming, is looking how we can ensure that that sports are widely and regularly practiced throughout the Commonwealth. Versus, well, it's always been there, it needs to stay on there. And I think it's really ensuring that, that we're also keeping up with the times. It's an exciting sport, and very fitting for the positioning of our Commonwealth Games, our Commonwealth brand, and just a beautiful addition. But, it has to be, I think, as we move forward, as we're designing future sports programs, as we're starting to be, I would say, innovative, we have to start considering more and more what sports are widely and regularly practiced across the Commonwealth, and that we can generate more and more appeal. And that's, I think, one of the things that's been the strength of the Commonwealth sports program. Sports like rugby sevens, have been nurtured and have evolved, throughout the Commonwealth Games. And of course, have made it to other big events, such as Continental Games, the Olympic Games, and so forth. So I think we have a real place in nurturing the development of sports worldwide, in the Commonwealth, but also I think we also have a great chance to develop sport within the Commonwealth. When we take a different approach. There's other sports like hockey, or disciplines like hockey fives that I know that the FIH is working on. You're looking at rowing is looking at coastal rowing for a number of sports. So these are some emerging, not on the program yet, but these federations see real opportunity in the demographics of the Commonwealth to really grow and expand their sports. And when you put the two together, the games program and the development programs, we can do a lot of good to get sport out there. So that's just, I think beach volleyball is a great example of that. We're delighted to see it celebrated here in, dare I say, the home of beach volleyball here on the Gold Coast.
Oh, that's a great idea, David. The home of beach volleyball here on the Gold Coast. And on that note, there's a lot of work to get it on this schedule, but I think there's still a lot of work to do for Birmingham 2022 for beach volleyball. So I'd love to talk further about that. I thought it would,
That was
you
the
know,
moment.
the images would show how great we can bring a bit of the Gold Coast to Birmingham. So I'm happy to talk to anyone about that too.
We look forward to seeing that. Mark, perhaps we'll look back at yesterday and look at what we can expect today.
Yeah, another fabulous day, and I think the front of it all was the performance of the athletes. And I was lucky enough to be the swimming last night and the velodrome the night before. And as we said, we just have outstanding athletes here, and the performance was great. Particularly the enthusiasm. It rained a little bit last night, and I went up and sat in the crowd. And after the last two events, no one knew it rained. They were just so happy and cheering and just had a good time. So. We thank all the spectators. They've been absolutely fantastic, and they're flocking to the events. And we saw beach volleyball, its appearance yesterday, well over 10,000 people there, and just enjoying it. And the pictures that are going, and this is one of the reasons you bid for games, the pictures going around the world of our venues and how that relates into our beaches. And beach volleyball's got one of those beautiful locations for a sport. So they're all positives, and it's great for us to see the families and the kids there. Because again, one of the ambitions you have when you run a major event is actually to inspire young kids of the future to be physically active and get involved in sport, and that's been a real positive for us. A couple of highlights to me was the South African Chad Laclos, who equalled Michael Wendon's record and Karen Pickering by winning 13 Commonwealth Games medals when he won the 50-metre butterfly. And so great to see Michael Wendon there presenting it to him, and that was a pretty special moment. So those things are things that stick in everyone's memory, particularly in the swimming fraternity for a long time. And the other was Dylan Carter from Trinidad and Tobago, who won their first medal when came second in the 50 butterfly. And those performances are something that you really remember. And that's again across male and female events. And we keep saying equal number of medals for males and females is a really strong point in working with the CGF that this game's delivered. So today, we see a number of events again. We've actually got 22 gold medals, 14 sports will be contested over 15 venue. Men's and women's para-triathlon becomes another first as they make their games debut today as well. And we've sold and we will have around 85,000 spectators attending events today. So another exciting day for us ahead. And I think it's about celebrating athletes and for the media, and sometimes we have good relationships and sometimes we have interesting ones. I think the way the athletes in particular and the sports are being portrayed here, interstate and overseas, has been fantastic, and the feedback we're getting about the Gold Coast, about the athletes, about the CGF and what the principles are around the relevancy of a games is getting that right coverage and that right debate around the world, and that's really important for a host city, and that's why we bid for these sorts of games, to get that recognition and discussion, and we couldn't have been happy about where things are at.
Thanks, Mark. If I can ask for any questions from the floor, specifically for sport, whether it's volleyball, the sports programme, and then we will thank Natalie and move on to transport security and other issues. So, just first question on the front row.
Hi, good morning. Howell from the BBC. Birmingham is a beautiful city in many ways, but how does beach volleyball work there? Come on, tell us.
Well, I mean, I've played in the past in Switzerland, in the Swiss Alps, in a ski resort. I played in Norway on the side of the harbour in 4 degrees. I know that it's just taking a little bit of the Gold Coast. Let's pass the baton on.
Literally Gold Coast land?
We can. If I have to bring it in my suitcase for you, I will do that. But I think, the British teams are very good. They will have a chance here as well. They've got a Kiwi coach. He's a very good friend of mine. He's been giving me updates. The girls looking good, the boys looking good. And I think, there's not, a home games lifts our athletes. We've heard the world record in the cycling the last 2 nights, that the crowd really brings them home. And I think that, if we want to see medals for the UK in beach volleyball, we got to take the Gold Coast sand with you.
Build the beaches now, yeah?
Yeah, build the beaches. I mean, we also played in Paris under the Eiffel Tower. You really don't need a beach per se. It's sand. Let's build an intimate stadium in Birmingham, and showcase the people who come to Birmingham looking for the beach, and you'll just say, well, it's just here for 2022.
Yes, next question.
Mark, Cameron Bowe from 7 News. I just wondered if you had any correspondence from the Grenadian team regarding their volleyball
Transport
events
challenge?
in Brisbane. Yeah.
We spoke to them straight away, and for those that don't know, but I'm sure most do, that the bus driver punched in the run code and was heading up to Brisbane, and the bus was turned around, came back. The athletes were in the bus longer than they should have been. We had a police escort right at the end just to make sure they got through some of the streets. They arrived in time for their event. We had our technical director meet them at the gate. Interesting thing was they actually wanted selfies taken with the police officers before they went in, so they were pretty relaxed. And we made sure that there was plenty of time for them to rest and also train. There were no events after them, and a couple of the events before had gone longer, so that allowed that to peter out pretty well. We spoke to them yesterday, say a technical director. They had more time to prepare before the game, but they were fine about where they were physically and their headspace. They played. We spoke to them again last night because this is the worst thing you want as an organising committee, to have athletes being distracted in any way. And even being in a bus, for an hour longer than you should is a distraction. We've all been, and Nat and myself and others have been caught in traffic in different places, and we've been warming up in buses, and I've been getting dressed in the middle of Tokyo on a bus because baseball uniforms aren't the easiest thing to put on quickly. But it's not acceptable. And so for us as an organising committee, we are now ensuring that we have 2 people on the buses, the driver and someone else, to actually make sure that directionally that doesn't happen again. There's been some questions about, is this because bus drivers have come from interstate? This was actually a Queenslander who came from North Queensland. The reality is, in a city, a regional city like this, and we've said from day one, we do not have enough people here to run a game. So we've had to bring thousands of interstate security guards, we've had to bring thousands of bus drivers. The education was there. The apps are always interesting. And if you push the wrong button, it takes you in the wrong direction. So I think the big lesson we learned, particularly in some locations a little bit further away, we have to have extra help on that bus to make sure this never happens again. The Rwandans want to move, the Ukrainians want to move on. Again, we spoke to them again this morning. They just want to focus on the sport now. They're playing again tonight, and so we look forward to supporting them.
Thanks. There's another question.
Just Tom Wren from Channel 9. I guess as a follow-up to that, you obviously made appropriate changes and are confident nothing like that will be repeated. And Natalie, will you maybe escort them, make sure they get there for the big game against the Aussies tonight as well? Yeah,
on the back of the motorbike, that'd be good. And things like this happen. You sometimes can't prepare for something like this. You don't train to get on a bus and stay there longer, but it really is. They had plenty of time. They were met there. They were asked if they wanted more time, and that. What you do next, which is what they're doing, is going early to tonight's match. And of course they're playing Australia tonight. They've asked to be there 2 hours early. I'm sure they'll be really excited in tonight's game with an Aussie crowd, probably a little bit overwhelmed as well.
Tracy.
Hi Natalie, Tracy Holmes, ABC. Just a question about the lasting images that are going to go around the world, most likely are going to be from the beach volleyball. Why has it taken so long for Australia to, celebrate between drinks? The gold medal that you guys won in 2000 and what hopefully will be a medal here. And the team we have, an Indigenous player and one that's originally from Peru. How is the sport of beach volleyball going in Australia? And do you think that we have success kind of right there, really happening?
Absolutely, the success is right on the doorstep. The back pages of the papers yesterday or 2 days ago were Maria Fay and Taliqua, and that their inspiration came from a postcard that Kerry and I had signed 15 years ago. And it made its way to Peru with an auntie, and I actually didn't know the story. So Maria Fay had never told me. She just went about trying to become the best beach volleyballer in the world. Her and Taliqua actually helped Tamsin and I qualify for the London Olympics. The Olympics had changed the schedule and how that worked, and you actually needed 2 pairs to help qualify a spot in what they call a Continental Cup. So they were our second young team that helped me go to my 5th Olympics. And to see them now, and Mark talked about the legacy and inspiring kids, and my 2.5-year-old was at the gymnastics yesterday and just right in front of the beam, loved it. We are going to see our 6 to 12-year-olds now, our Aussie kids and kids from all over the world, go on to games in 10, 15 years' time, which we're seeing from Maria Fay for beach volleyball, from an inspiration that they see yesterday or today or over the next 9 days. And that is what excites me as an athlete. I was inspired by Lisa Curry in the 1982 Commonwealth Games, swimming. I was a swimmer at the time. Didn't know I'd end up as a beach volleyballer. But 1982, I got inspired and I went to my first Olympics in 96, so that was 14 years. That's the gap in what we are cultivating now. And volleyball, once it goes to Birmingham in 2022 and Tokyo in 2020 and continues on in Paris in 24 and wherever the Commonwealth Games goes in 26, we need a bit more breadth. If I'm going to be perfectly honest, we need some more depth in our participation pathway, and I believe volleyball needs to direct some of its funding to the grassroots, and that's what the kids of today is going to change the future of beach volleyball. Until then, Taliqua and Maria Fay are going to carry the torch, and Damien and Chris in the men. Because men do play beach volleyball, I must tell you that. We do see a lot about the women, but the men do play and they're very good too. Their uniforms, they're probably a little overdressed, but we can't change that right now.
Any final questions on the score before we say goodbye to Natalie? Yes, Duncan. Duncan, okay, just...
Duncan McCarthy, Inside the Games. David, there's a lot of pressure on all these sports wanting to be part of the programme at Birmingham in 2022. How set in stone is that programme, and how many more sports can you accommodate?
Yeah, I think we've answered this a couple of times in the post-award of Birmingham. We've had a number of sports that have just come out and said, me too, we want to be involved in this journey, we're committed to it. We've actually had, over probably the past 6 to 8 months, more sports say we want to be part of the Commonwealth sports movement. How do we do it? To be very honest with you, in 2015, we made a decision to expand our core sports program, to really solidify our optional sports program. The difference is that the core sports are obviously core, compulsory, so when you're bidding, you have to deliver those sports. That's grown since Glasgow, and even since Goldcoast 2018. It used to be 10, it's now 17. And then on top of that, we have a number of sports and disciplines that are widely and regularly practicing in the Commonwealth that are optional, beach volleyball being one of them. That optional process allows cities to fine-tune what they want. And that's up to 4,300 athletes. So they need to basically have 3,800 of the core sports athletes, and then another 500 they can chop and change within the 500 number of how many disciplines they want to offer in the optional sports. If there is additionality, that would be brought forward by the host partners for us to consider. And as they establish an organizing committee, which is underway right now, this may be something they consider moving down. It comes down to cost, it comes down to operations, it comes down to the size and complexity of the event, and also the global appeal. And I think, this is very much a starting point. We had beach volleyball in Bahamas, and I think it's, you're constantly going through reflection. We do have a set program for Birmingham 2022 right now, but any additionality would need to be considered by that organizing committee once it's kind of up and running, just as was the case with Gold Coast 2018, and that was something that they had done. So it's not a promise, but that's the process, and it's something that, as I said, I think moving forward to 26 and 2030 as well, we need to get this program right. And that's one of the things we want: sports. We want federations that are dedicated, not only to delivering great games, but developing their sports in the Commonwealth, widely and regularly practicing throughout the Commonwealth. And I think, this is really, really important. So, FIVB, I think, has shown just a major, a major commitment to these games and a huge interest to move forward. And so, we look forward to exploring that much further with a number of sports. But we also have a number of sports that are all chomping at the bit to get on to the 2018 program.
Okay, final question on the sports program.
Hi David, Greg Stoltz, News Corp, how you going? I just wanted to ask, obviously there's been a bit of talk about surfing not being included in the Gold Coast Games. Is there any prospect at all for surfing in any future Commonwealth Games, given I guess that's part of the Olympics in 2020?
It's true. I think the ISA had a keen interest in Gold Coast, obviously with such a beautiful coastline, and this was even as part of before they were signed up to participate in Tokyo 2020. Again, small states and island states, there's a lot of surf opportunities. Even where I live in Scotland, there's huge surf. So this is something I think as the ISA develops, they also support a number of athletes from Commonwealth countries as part of their scholarship and sponsorship programs. I think there's certainly, we need to be looking at the relevance of various sports in the Commonwealth and as these grow and their popularity on the global scene. But I do think that the Commonwealth plays a large part in a number of these sports, and you'll see a lot of Commonwealth countries participating in ISA events and certainly in the Olympics, and it's something that we need to take seriously and just look at the size and complexity of our ability to work with this, not just for the games, well beyond the games as well. I think that's something. We have our youth games as well, and we have some strong ambitions to get our youth games out to as many countries as possible and to create other pathways, and not just to our main games, but to other sports as well. We had beach football or beach soccer in Bahamas, and unbelievable watching these kids from Trinidad and Tobago and St. Lucia. Looks like they were skating on ice. If any of us have tried to not only jump in the sand but run in the sand, it's unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable the ease in which these kids were performing. But a truly spectator-friendly, exciting sport and relevant to a number of small states and island states. These are the types of discussions and exploration that we need to do as a Commonwealth movement, which is actually quite exciting as well, because we can be a relevant innovator in developing sport worldwide.
Okay, thank you. We'll happily take any questions, any broader questions, not necessarily sport related, but on security, transport, any other matters you might have. To do so, I'll also invite Deputy Commissioner Goldcoast from Queensland Police, should you have any questions for him as well.
Ben, can I just add one comment to the participation, Tracy, you asked about? I think we saw at the opening ceremony the amazing surf lifesaving movement and our nippers leading out the teams. And one of the things, my belief is that our nippers program, we're trying to increase, put beach volleyball in there. So we have 60,000 nippers playing, doing surf lifesaving every weekend in the summer. And if we can add a ball to their hands, I think we'll see some more Taliquas and Maria Fays. So we'll see if we get some Olympic, and that adds to the nipper lifesaving movement, a Commonwealth Games and an Olympic pathway. It's pretty exciting. You're excited about the beach volleyball too.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Natalie, thank you. You're very welcome to continue to join us, but we don't expect you to be answering the questions.
Oh, I feel honoured here. I'm going to sit with you.
Okay. Any further questions for the head table? Duncan, first of all.
Duncan outside of Games. David, the decision on Rwanda, is that not setting a dangerous precedent? Because every country here has some event in their history they want to mark. Are you not opening the door for celebrations of everything?
I think we need to, I think peace, sustainability, and prosperity. We'll take these on a case-by-case basis, but, I think it's pretty, Rwanda being a country that, was not part of the, say, empire, if you will, and their inclusion, one of the main reasons that they wanted to be included in the Commonwealth, this modern Commonwealth, was because of these modern ideals of peace, prosperity, good governance, and human rights. And so I think in terms of our modern relevance to a country that has joined this family of nations, we feel that this is an important part of history that we need to tell, and it's now a part of Commonwealth history. And I think that from that perspective, I think, I do take your point. I do take your point that, we do need to, I think, be selective, but I think Rwanda's particular recent history, and where they've come through that time of darkness and moving forward, and where the Commonwealth has been seen as a beacon of hope for the future, we felt it was important to recognize that moment.
Yes.
Hi, Sally Hills from Channel 7. Just on some local issues, we had stories about businesses complaining that they didn't have enough people coming through. Do you think it's going to pick up this weekend? Have you noticed already a lot of people lining up for tickets? Well,
Yes, I saw those stories and we addressed them yesterday when the similar question was asked. And I was talking to the City Council representatives this morning. They weren't noticing anything. I guess there's two ends of it. One is early in the morning, because certainly around lunchtime into the afternoon and evening, and with the festivals and that going on, it was very lively last night. And the other is the nightclubs after midnight, which I'm not particularly familiar with. It's the family games, and I'm sure as the athletes finish their competition, there might be some activity. So overall, when we ask the questions, and we can only talk to the City Council, they've run the Get Set program and all the messaging, and so certainly I noticed myself yesterday the number of cars on the road and things happening down, particularly around Broadbeach and Surface, was certainly very active.
should businesses be taking their own initiative to generate more business for themselves?
Yeah, again, it's the commercial operations, they need to, I guess, be looking at ways to promote, but I can accept that perhaps with a lot of the hype around early, they were perhaps thinking early on they would be absolutely going gangbusters and all that. It's building. Yesterday I was out at the airport. There are so many people still coming in. Not everyone just comes in for the opening ceremony. They pick their sports and their programs. So I think it's be patient, but yeah, promote as you can and be innovative. But we're just seeing lots of people, and there are many that are already reporting. Coolangatta, yesterday when the beach volleyball started, they were just party time all along that main street, and I think we're going to see that across the whole city.
Just about the volunteers, how popular are they becoming? We've seen some really good ones around the place, cheering people on and getting them moving. Are you getting some good feedback?
Oh, absolutely. You know, we always talk about what's the heart and soul of the games, and the athletes are the absolute priority and they're the stars. The volunteers aren't far behind them, and without that enthusiasm, you know, some of us get caught down in the operational minutiae every day, and you walk out and talk to a volunteer and you go, yeah, that's what they're all about. It's about people being excited, and they just love meeting people from interstate and overseas. So again, I just think it's a wonderfully successful program because of the volunteers in it, and they're such a positive advertisement for this city. You know, we are a tourism city. We're diversifying the economy through the games, but it's the people of the city. We're actually leading into the games searching for something, because I love the Glasgow theme, and they had it in pink and white across the city, people make Glasgow. And they had a fantastic atmosphere as well. We haven't been able to find that phrase, but the smiles on the faces, and I get to talk to the delegates all the time, and I get to talk to athletes, and we have exactly the same thing here. Really pleased.
Can I add something to the volunteers? I mean, this is my 5th event of the past 20 years that I've worked in Australia on, and I can say that, you know, the level of friendliness, professionalism, and pride that we're seeing from the volunteers has been second to none. Absolutely amazing, you know, and just the engaging, you know, what can I do to help you? How are you enjoying your time? I mean, it's just so forthcoming, and it's absolutely brilliant. And we've actually seen, I think there's quite a few stories about people who've traveled from other Commonwealth Games to volunteer here on the Gold Coast. It's obviously a wonderful location, but there's camaraderie and networking and relationships and pen pals being developed on that. So I think there's a real solidarity amongst the volunteers, and maybe we should get some volunteers up here to talk about their experience as being volunteers. But it really is fantastic, and simply these games do not go around without people.
And just last one. The case of malaria, what's happening with that? And also the New Zealand rugby player who had the mumps, are they all okay now? And are there any more cases of the flu?
So there was, one case of malaria, and that person was, after going to the polyclinic, was actually put into the Gold Coast Hospital and is there at the moment receiving the best care. Malaria is not contagious, but all the steps being done by the CGA and the doctors are the best that can be done. So I don't have a report in the last 24 hours, but certainly there was one.
And that was a pre-existing condition prior to arrival. No, I think in terms of privacy, we're not obliged to say that.
Yeah. In relation to the mumps, so as you may remember, there was one team player in the New Zealand team based on the Sunshine Coast that was diagnosed. That team was kept up there. The other members were tested. The majority of the team are already through that period of not actually being able to get the mumps. The other three were tested and were clear, and I can find out, but I'm not sure they're either in the village or about just to get into the village. But I think we can come back to you on that.
Yes.
One for the Deputy Commissioner. Can you explain what the process will be from here following the laying of charges against the Mauritian team official, please?
Yeah, so he was charged yesterday, as we've indicated in our release. He is bailed to appear on the 17th of April. So in terms of process, the next step in the process is that court appearance.
Are there any restrictions on his movements between now and
Yeah, there's normal bail restrictions we put on that in terms of contact with people involved in the investigation and where he can go.
Can you confirm he left last night?
Yes, he did.
And is that a problem for police? Are you upset with those bail conditions, and do you expect him to return for April 17th?
As I explained earlier in the week, it's not the type of offence that we would prevent people travelling on. Or take any measure to do that, and as I said, he's made an undertaking to appear on the 17th. That'll be the next step that we'll consider in the process.
Do you expect him to be back?
I'm not going to speculate on that, Greg. It's a matter for himself.
Ed.
Mark, just on the bus thing, can you confirm that the bus actually went all the way up to the shooting venue and then had to go back down? Just wasn't sure when you were talking about that.
Yeah, it got up to the velodrome.
Okay, next question, please. Any more questions? Yes, Duncan.
Duncan Kane, Inside the Games. I'm not sure if this is a question for Steve or Mark, but how many people have you turned back at the border? Because there's a report in the Ghanaian press about 50 people were turned away there posing as journalists.
It's probably not a question for either Mark or I. It's an Australia Border Force question. I'm not in a position really to give any details around numbers. I know there have been some, and we are kept briefed through our process. In terms of how it impacts on our security operation, it has none, so we don't get into too much detail. I'd suggest you go to Australian Border Force around that.
Yes, one.
Sorry, Steve, just one other on the Mauritian. If he fails to appear, is there any, I mean, would it be something he'd go to extradition on, or is it, how would that pan out?
No, well, obviously a failure to appear usually generates a warrant which the court would have to issue, so a matter for the court, and I should have mentioned this matter is now before the court, so I'm limited on what I will say. But as I said, similarly unlikely that we would consider extradition for this type of offence.
Any final questions before we wrap up? Okay, thank you very much. Thanks to our head table.